If someone doesn't know, who Kevin Vane is as a person before a designer, what would you say?
As a person, I would say from looking from the outside in, very artistic, lives life like it's a performance. Theater major, so I love all things theatrical. Very, very down to earth, not what people really expect because of the outfits and the clothes. Basically, Kevin Vane just takes up 50% of my life, and the other 50 is Kevin. And I've mastered the art of creating those to be two separate people, so I know how to cut it off and cut it on. So Kevin is definitely a completely different person, and Kevin Vane is more uptight and serious and more about his business.
Let's talk about Kevin Vane for a second. When did the idea trickle that this is what you wanted to be? You wanted to be doing the interview right now. When did that idea trickle for you? What age?
About 3 years ago in 2010, late summer. Didn't really come at an instant. It took a while. I didn't know anything about fashion really. I got put on through reading Urban Outfitters magazines and going to the mall and exploring new stores versus just Hollister and Abercrombie and Fitch. And one thing led to another. It led to taking sewing classes. It led to buying Vogue magazines and researching different fashion moguls like Isabella Blow or Daphne Guinness. And after doing all that research, I started to receive different visions or design aesthetic visions, and I would just sketch them or write them down, and I would show my old fashion apparel teacher, and she would kind of empower me to try and have those created.
Right.
So that's why I started to take sewing classes, because when I saw how much a seamstress was, I just refused to do it. So I just thought, well, I can do it myself. So I took sewing classes, I looked at YouTube tutorials, read sewing books, and I started to sew. So that's really how I started.
You just mentioned you said you didn't know anything about fashion. If someone asked you today what is fashion as of right now, what would you say? In your world, in your eyes.
Fashion really, it's a.
I'll put you like this easier. Give me 3 words to describe fashion right now, in your eyes.
Currently, I would explain it for my predicament, in my situation. I would use sacrifice, because it definitely really takes over your life, whether you want it to or not. So you have to sacrifice a lot. I would also use aura, because fashion really isn't, I don't think fashion is a word. I think fashion is a living, breathing entity that floats throughout the earth. I mean, fashion comes out through multiple different mediums: outfits, writing, visual art. I mean, fashion is it's a religion basically. So I would definitely use religion as one. And wait, that was 3, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I forgot what I said. And what was the first word?
Religion or sacrifice?
Sacrifice. Yeah, those are the 3 words I would use.
Let's switch speech for a second. Have you seen I forgot, it's I know it's a Louis Vuitton show on YouTube, runway show with the elevators. You seen that one? Well, what are your thoughts on that one? I know you've seen it. What are your thoughts on that? What was the first thing you thought when you saw that?
Well,
that Louis Vuitton runway show.
I thought Mark was genius for that.
He was.
The silhouettes of those clothes really created a whole new a whole new world for seam lines. I mean, all designers that I've seen have derived that whole bubble sleeve from that entire collection.
Right.
Um, I mean, him and Carl, they always have these big productions, and that's how I would like my shows to be someday. I mean, these shows, they cost millions of dollars for just 10 minutes. But I mean, at the end of the day, you have that footage for the rest of your life to keep, in your repertoire. But that show was definitely iconic. That was one of my favorites, because it was a performance. It wasn't a fashion show. It was a performance.
Right. Now, in curating, a Kevin Vane design, in the design process, what is your design process like? I'm not saying you got to range me from A to Z, but if someone wanted to know what a Kevin Vane design process is, what would you tell them? How intense would you tell them it is?
A Kevin Vane design process is quite insane and chaotic. Ultimately, I think beautiful stuff comes from chaos. My new collection, it came from music, really. I was listening to a lot of opera, a lot of Italian opera, and it's a particular operetta. Her name is Natalie Dessay. She's really the only opera singer I listen to, and she created a new album, and it's based off of the Lucia di Lammermoor opera by I forgot the composer's name. But it's an Italian opera, and I just listened to the entire CD. The CD is 4 hours long. And after the CD, I just felt very inspired. I had a lot of ideas, and I just sketched my life away. But each collection or each piece comes differently. Example, for a private client, it comes from the energy that I feel from that client, or from what I envision for that client, based off of their personality or their current fashion sense, whatever the case. I mean, I never pull inspiration from the same thing because that gets boring. I hate when designers say they're inspired by something like a flower or Jackie Kennedy, because that is so boring.
Right.
It's so boring, and it gives away all the goods. I think it's much more interesting if you create a 12-piece collection based off of an oil spill you saw downtown, which is what happened with me.
Let's say, what's your favorite era of fashion? And if Kevin Vane was in that era, what would his designs look like?
I would say my favorite era was the Queen Elizabethan age. I'm obsessed with the movie Elizabeth. The fashion is ridiculous. I love the high collars and the crinolines and the beaded lace and the painted white faces with fake moles, and the Queen Elizabeth age was my favorite era because that was when haute couture was created. Second favorite will probably the 20s, around Jackie O's time, to use that as a landmark for people to know what I'm talking about. Pale boxes, that's when women started to wear trousers, and the whole women revival movement. Those are my two favorite. I mean, I like the movement that's going on right now with the whole self-expression thing, but I think it's kind of fake, so I don't like it as much. But I like how a lot of designers and stylists are starting to push the boundaries, thanks to McQueen, of course. But Elizabethan age was my favorite. That was my favorite.
Speaking of boundaries, like you just said, what's one thing you see that designers and stylists lack today that you think holds them back from really pushing the envelope and doing what the masses need, doing what the marketplace really needs?
I think they lack not more so lack. I think what it is they're trying too hard. They're doing too much research. They're trying to please too many people. They're trying to book too many clients. They're not perfecting their craft before they take on the next project. And because you take on the project without your craft, you start to produce shitty work. And you start to listen to so many people. I get advice from people all the time, and I feel like if I took each person's advice, Kevin Bay would not be my vision anymore. And I think that's what a lot of stylists do, because I mean, styling, there's no right or wrong way. So it's easy for me to give you this prophetic like analysis of how I think you should do something. And just because I'm a fashion designer or I'm a magazine editor, you're going to think what I'm saying is right when it's really not. What you think is right. And a lot of stylists in Charlotte, or stylists period, they're not serious. And they're not ready to do free work. They want to charge off gate, and you have to go through a time of free work before you can charge. So they haven't mastered the entire art of styling. And it's ultimately coming from their own self. They're not staying true to their own vision. They're letting the world conform their visions.
You just mentioned staying true to your own vision. People don't know, we're at wemec High School right now. That's where Kevin graduated from. As a last question I want to ask, what did wemec teach you in terms of, doing you? How did wemec get you to where you are today?
wemec definitely created a tough skin. wemec definitely caused me to be prepared for the monster of the fashion industry, because I don't think any human being, or any grown adult rather, is worse than an immature, ignorant high schooler. wemec showed me that everyone is not going to give a fuck about you. And at the end, you ultimately have yourself. And it can be 1,000 people against you. As long as there's one person for you, anything is possible. I had good days and bad days here. So it definitely showed me that you shouldn't let the day before judge the day after. And I think it was just like boarding school. It just prepared me for real life, because real life is horrible. So that's it.